This is our sculpt for Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah, you can see where we've got like that extreme burn look to it, and kind of like this dislocated jaw with the exposed teeth, and we're gonna put in there like a dead eye, you know, because like what John was talking about, you know, he is essentially a zombie, and we're really just trying to pull all those and accentuate those specific features, like the flat top head and the bolts as well. And then we'll take all that, like the bolts and stuff, and rust all that down.
After you go through the graveyard, you come to the cemetery, you find an entrance to a crypt, you go inside the crypt, much like they did in Bride of Frankenstein. Outside of the crypt, there are statue characters. Oftentimes, Chris and I have done different gags over the years with horror nights called living statues. This is a variation on the living statue where, Chris, you can't even see this one's face. Comes to life, comes after you, go further into the crypt. And this is what I mean when I say Frankenstein at its core is as scary and disturbing as any modern horror film. Do you guys know who this little girl is? Maria, exactly right, little Maria. In the film, Frankenstein is playing that game with Maria by the lake where they're throwing flowers in the river, and they run out of flowers. So what's he do? He picks up Maria, he throws her in the lake like a child because he can't understand. She drowns, her father picks him up in his arms, runs through the town crying. So we thought for this maze, this is Maria's crypt that we're going into. Frankenstein's gone in there looking for his friend. He's found her. Unfortunately, he's found her grave. He's taken off the lid, and when you come in the scene, he's got Maria, but she's been in there for a while. And she's a decomposed corpse that's rotting away. That's not the only thing in this crypt. There's also all of the corpses that have been buried in here that come to life, multiple characters that come to life. And then somebody else invades the crypt, much like in Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. The Wolfman. Now, when you distill the Wolfman down to his core element, really that story is about the beast within. The entire movie, The Wolfman, was written by a man who was Jewish, and the movie came out in 1941, right at the beginning of World War II for the United States of America. The man actually wrote the movie to be a metaphor for what was going on in the world at the time. That's what made these movies so scary when they came out back in the early days, the 30s or 40s, is they were speaking to their times very distinctly. In this case, if you looked around the world in 1941, it seemed like men were truly turning into beasts, and that's why this man wrote the screenplay for The Wolfman. So we wanted to bring that out, but we wanted to show that transformation process as opposed to the full transformation. So this was our original design, which you and I kind of went back and forth and weren't all that happy with, honestly.
That's our original intent. You know, we were trying to get some differences, but still push those really scary elements like the bearing teeth as well. We're trying to pull up on, you know, the pointed ears, you can see, and really make it really aggressive and really intense.
So then I mentioned again, Crash got a hold of this and he did his magic with it, as you can see, and this is the sculpt for our Wolfman.
Yeah, this is through the effects. It's sculpted out of oil-based clay that you can see really the fine details within around his eyes and everything. So they put a lot of time and effort into this, and you can see with the bearing teeth that it really captured that concept look to it.
And then one of the most labor-intensive parts of this process, of course, is adding all the hair. So all of those hairs have to be individually hand-punched into every single mask we make. But that's what our Wolfman is going to look like. Once you come out of the crypt, you're facing, which I think if you've been in the park, have you guys been in the park recently and over by Mel's Diner, you see this big turret rising, which I'm sure none of you figured out, right? None of you guys had any clue that we were going to do a Universal Monster Maze, right? You just saw this big castle coming up behind that giant construction wall. We want to take you into Frankenstein's castle, but we want to take it to you much like Bride of Frankenstein, where it's already started to go to hell. Because, like I mentioned, when I was 4 years old, who did I think the monsters of Frankenstein's were? I thought it was the villagers. I thought it was all the people running around with axes and torches and pitchforks. To me, they were scarier than the monsters. So we wanted to give these guys a role, bring them to life, and make them feel scary as well. First of all, this is Chris's design. Go ahead.
Yeah, so what I do is I do little teeny, small little rough drawings and elevations, and I do them actually in scale. So I start like a little small quarter-inch, scale. And then author's inside working. You can tell by the electrical equipment above working and going off, and you'll see that as we approach. So look, we were really also trying to make the castle kind of innocent to be its own character. So I think you can kind of see like the face within, kind of like this little bit of a skull kind of face within, to try to make that facility really just look like a castle and a face within it, and then that you have to enter into its mouth inside to go into the experience.
Now, swarming all around the outside of the castle are these guys, the angry villagers. But if you look back at the original film, they're all dressed in suits. It's like they all got dressed up to go out and attack the monster. They all got like these three-piece suits on and fedoras. Of course, we wanted it to be more like the times the movie was made in or the times that the book was written in. So this is our design for the angry villagers.
And we were just really trying to get a rough, kind of peasant look, but then really make them extreme on the face. These guys will be wearing prosthetics, and then we've got some really long, crazy beards for them, and really trying to push the age, but make it very scary. You can see that.
And then once you go into the castle, it's all on fire, the beams are falling down, you get attacked by Frankenstein again. Frankenstein, in fact, is the character you're going to see the most in this attraction. But then you come into an area where it says vault, and you enter inside, and it's a film vault. It's literally a film vault. It's the place where all of the monster movies are stored. And what the villagers are trying to do is to burn it all down. They're trying to destroy the Universal monsters. There's actually a screen set up with an old projector, and on that projector we're going to be projecting the original theatrical trailer for Frankenstein. And then the monster is going to bust through the screen and attack you. And as you go further into the castle, you start going down these hallways. And that's where you meet the next character, that's the Invisible Man. Again, we went to our research and inspiration for what to do for the Invisible Man. And actually, Chris and I looked back on an effect we did for Halloween 2, Hell Comes to Haddonfield.
Yeah.
Describe how we did this.
And you can see how we did this. We did this with UV fluorescent lighting, as well as fluorescent painting, where we had those skull pumpkin forms glowing, like you can tell. Then we had those floating without, kind of like in space, in this black void. And then we had costume characters wearing these masks, and they're all in blackout. So that theory is the same theory that we're pushing forward to our Invisible Man look.
So this is the design for the Invisible Man, and all the areas that you see have disappeared. That's how we're doing that effect. So you're going to run into him in the castle, and as you're going through the scene, you're going to hear organ music in the distance, as if somebody's playing an organ. Who can that be? Phantom of the Opera.
That's our inspiration for the music.
So how we approach the castle is to find a reason for why all these characters will be located within it, because all these movies take place in different countries, in different time periods. We looked at all the rooms you would typically have in a castle or a manor house, and then we found a reason for why one of our Universal Monster characters would exist in that room. So obviously for Phantom of the Opera, it's the music room. So this is just some research that we did when we were thinking about what we wanted that to look like. This is Chris's elevation. You can describe what we're doing with the statues.
This is one of the elevations of inside the music room, and it shows one big wall essentially, and through those arches are essentially plexi, so we can get some water effects. So we're down within the Phantom, but we're trying to let you get an idea that we might do within the canals as well, and as well as we're going to do one of these living statue gags. As you see this elevation, we're going to walk parallel to this wall, and you know what we do is one of these things is not like the other with respect to the statues, and maybe some of them will come to life, maybe they won't.
You never can tell.
You never can tell.
And then we come to the Phantom himself, who's seated behind the organ. For inspiration for the Phantom, you know, obviously there's the original character done by Lon Chaney. This is also from some of the later sequels. You know, in some iterations of the story, he was burned by acid. That's what caused his face to become disfigured. But when we look back to some of our sequels that we made to Phantom of the Opera, it's kind of tame as far as the level of detail of that scarring and that burn. And so we looked to movies like, you know, the Batman franchise, and the Two-Face character, took that as inspiration, gave it to our designers.
And then that's the intent, our intent. You can see it's really extreme with that acid burn, and and that really exposed eye and around by his cheeks, all that muscle tissue and stuff.
And then we gave it to Patrick McGee. It just doesn't want to do it, does it? There it goes.
There you go.
And that's the sculpt from the Phantom character.
So this sculpture, actually, for some of you that know a little bit of the effects industry, is sculpted by Jordan Shell. And he sculpted a handful, about 8 different sculptures for McGee Effects for us for Halloween Horror. So if you know any of his work, I can tell you can see that I tell you, we're really bringing the best for you guys.
Then once you go, there we go. Once you leave the music room, you come into the banquet room where there is the blood feast, and this is where you're going to meet Count Dracula and his brides, okay? Just like I mentioned before, we wanted to come up with a reason for why Dracula would be in this castle, so that's why we kind of went with the banquet room. There's a giant feast taking place in this room, except everybody who's been invited to the feast has been drained of all their blood, and the blood has been smeared all over the walls. And also you're looking out the window to the exterior of the castle. We're using projection again, so you're seeing this blood red sky, you're seeing vampire bats flying around. But before you get there,
so there's some drawings on that. You know, we're going to use a lot of blood. And so I tell you, like last year...
Are we going to use a shining level amount of blood?
Amount in the elevator. We used, you guys went through that, that was 8 gallons. 8 gallons of blood in there. And so we're going to use the equivalent. If you look on the ground plan, around the table, you see that squiggly line. Basically, that's our blood line on the ground. And that's just on
You're literally going to be walking through blood to get through the room. For the character of Dracula, for the inspiration, we thought about him like you would think about a meth addict, honestly. If you think about somebody who has an addiction, like an addiction to meth, they show that addiction on their face, don't they? Right. Dracula and his brides have the same addiction, it just happens to be a different drug of choice. For them, it's blood. They're addicted to blood. So we wanted to show that on their face by making their skin like semi-translucent and showing every single vein that's in the human face through that skin, which will be part of the design of the mask.
And how to do that and how we achieve that is doing a mask out of silicone, actually. And we've done those lately. You guys have seen those. And trying to get a translucent skin look, we can get those veins to look as though they're underneath the skin.
And then for the design of Dracula, this is what our artist came up with. But again, we had Crash working with us too, so we took that a little bit farther, and that's the sculpt.
That's the finished product of the sculpt.
There's also Dracula's brides. There we go. And in the original film in 1931, they're pretty much like these fanatical followers. So that's what we kind of keyed into for these characters, that the fanatical followers of Dracula, but we wanted to amp up the level of gore. That's why you see the picture of Carrie. So, gave this to our artists.
And they would be covered in blood, you know, you would think that, you know? And that's what we did. And, you know, also we attached kind of like their little cape to their hands to try to get them a little bit more, you know, bad-ish.
And this exaggerated the makeup too with the ears, the facial features. In fact, this is the sculpt. Oh, every time I do one, I get 12. There we go. That's the sculpt for one of the vampire brides. And then once you leave that scene, you come to the collection room. You know, if you've ever been in a castle, oftentimes they have a room where they collect everything that they've pillaged from all over the world, suits of armor, oftentimes there's Egyptian artifacts. So we wanted to build a collection room that has sarcophaguses in them, but also there's an elevation for Chris that shows the sarcophagus, and then there's a table in there that's like part of an archaeological dig.
Yeah, we made a table. One of our prop guys, Luis Rodriguez, made this table. You'll see it when you get in there. It looks really cool. And, you know, most of the time, we put a ton of furniture in. You can see that long wall with the sarcophagus, and it's kind of bare for a collection room. But to be totally honest with you, nowadays we've got so much cool furniture and cool prop pieces at our warehouse. You know, we just left it there, and then we went and did a shopping trip at our warehouse where we picked out certain specific pieces that would go in here, as well as furniture that we can house more in the collection.
So So this will be like an Easter egg section of the maze. As you're coming through, you'll try to find the scroll from the mummy and all of the different artifacts that are associated with all the Universal monsters. But you'll also see specimen displays of like spiders and insects. And of course that means the character of Renfield. He's also in the room. But for the mummy, what we really wanted to key into is mummification is not a happy thing. It's an incredibly painful way to die. If you know anything about ancient Egypt, all the things they did to you in the process of burying you alive was horrific, and that pain should show on your face. So Chris and I did a lot of research with mummies, as you can see. Some of these are mummies they found in Mexico. Some of them are the bog people from Ireland and other parts of Europe. But if you look at their faces, you can see how they died. They look like they're in agony. And we wanted our character to look like that as well. So this is our design for the mummy.
Yeah, we took that what John's talking about, that scream, and took that and made it more aggressive, as though that mummy is really out to get you, and it's super aggressive. So you can see it, that we wanted a bare teeth and a big furrowed brow and no eyes.
And this is the sculpt for the mummy that's being done by Mickey Effects right now. This is Jordan too.
Yeah, and if you really look closely, look at all that leathery work looking around, the texture around its cheeks and stuff. This is truly an awesome sculpture.
And then I mentioned that there's another character in the scene. He's from the movie Dracula. His name is Renfield. For Renfield, he kind of keyed in on two different things. Victorian madness was the main thing we were looking for. That picture that you see of the guy in the striped shirt, that is what a Victorian mental patient looked like. The other picture you see is the man who laughed, Conrad Beat. We really like that crazy, exaggerated smile from that early film. So we combined those two things together to give us our version of Renfield, which looks like this. And you know, Renfield, he doesn't prey on humans like Dracula and his brides do. He eats insects and small rodents. So if you look closely in his hand, he's got a rat that he's literally ripped in half, and he's in the process of devouring all of the blood from the rat. So it's staining his face and it's all over his clothes. So he also has a little bit of a Joker feel to him as well. And this is the sculpted process for Renfield.
And we're really getting that bug eye, like that crazy eye. And then we'll go ahead and paint those eyes, and then we'll cut a slit above for the performer to see how much like our Walking Dead mask that you guys have seen on the market.
And then we're coming towards the end of the maze at this point, so we're heading towards the lab. And as you're heading towards the lab, you're hearing all of the trademark sounds coming from the lab, the sounds of all of the electrical gadgets going off, the thunderstorm happening. You still hear the villagers outside trying to burn the place down. You're hearing the classic lines from Frankenstein, "It's alive, in the name of God, now I know what it feels like to be God." And in the research for how we wanted this to look, these are some of the images we pulled. Obviously, the image of the black and white image is the electrical gadgets from the movie Frankenstein. But we noticed in certain parts of the world, they have a really haphazard way of doing electricity. I think this is from either Bangladesh or India, but this is like a telephone pole outside somebody's house. And you can see where the wires are just strung everywhere. And we thought in the early days of electricity, they wouldn't be that neat. There should be wires that are just going everywhere in Dr. Frankenstein's lab because it is the birth of electricity. So, this is just one wall elevation, also getting those trademark windows, Chris.
Yeah, just taking a little peek of that, and it is the trademark windows. You know, it's kind of that German impressionistic style for those times in the 30s that we pulled all those a little bit of angles and such, created those windows very similar to like you see in Bride of Frankenstein as well. And you know, vacuum form walls. You guys know how we do all of our scenic work and everything. True 8x8 beams and those kind of things. So we're really pulling off those scenic tricks within, you know, this whole thing, the whole attraction.
And then we run into Dr. Frankenstein's assistant, which the inspiration, in addition to Igor and Fritz, who was the hunchback character from the original Frankenstein, we pulled in the Baron from Dune as an inspiration, because really the core of this character is physical deformity. So we wanted to see that not only in his hunchback, his broken neck, but also that his face should be just repellent and grotesque. So we gave him all these crazy boils. Whoop. It's like trying to get it to stop on a dime. There we go. Yeah, that's the artist rendering, and then this is the sculpt. And he tries to stop you before you get into the lab proper. But once you step inside the lab, that means you're going to be from Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein. The inspiration we took for that, of course, was Colin Clive, but also the way they dressed. You know, and if you're a grave digger back in those times, it was a messy job. You were going to get gore all over you, you're going to get mud and dirt all over you, and we wanted to show that as well. And we also just liked the bug-eye expression of Brad Dourif from Lord of the Rings. So we took all of those things, melded them together, and there we go. And that's our artistic rendering for Dr. Frankenstein. That's going to be a face character, so we casted that to type. And then for the bride, truly is possessed. There we go. The inspiration we took from this is kind of the Black Dahlia scene that we did for American Horror Story, and also some of the dismembered gags we've done for Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We wanted you, when you walked into the lab, we wanted you to see Dr. Frankenstein in the process of trying to assemble the bride before the crazy villagers with torches burned the whole place down. So we're doing a magic illusion gag, and you can probably explain, Chris, how this works.
You guys have seen this similar gag before, which we just showed a couple production photos, but you can see here from a cutaway section view where our performer's located, and her upper half is located on the top part of the table. And this is,
and then the lower half of the body is concealed underneath the table. So basically, the performer, they're using her body from her mid-torso up to her head and her arms, but then everything else is a magic illusion effect. And then at the top of the lab, on top of the slab, right next to the big electrical gadgets and the big switch, is Frankenstein's monster. He's got his hand on the switch when you come in. He looks at you, he says, "We belong dead." Throws the switch, and you're all blown to hell. And it's a happy ending, but it's not over. Because we noticed where you exit this maze, and this maze, I should mention, is being built in Parisian Courtyard and Universal Plaza on the top deck of the theme park. Where you exit it, that takes you into a street in the park called French Street. And we thought to ourselves, well, wait a minute. We've got two Universal Monster characters whose stories take place in France. Who are they? Hunchback of Notre Dame and the Phantom of the Opera. So taking a nod from the Monster Masquerade, or the Masquerade Ball from Phantom of the Opera, we decided that we would do a Monster Masquerade scare zone that is attached to this maze that you'll experience when you leave the maze.
and it continues.
This is a lineup of some of the characters in that scare zone. I'll take you through a couple of them. The Hunchback of Notre Dame. This is our design of the Hunchback of Notre Dame. He's going to be one of the featured characters in the scare zone, kind of like the King of Fools festival that took place in the movie. And that's the sculpt. Oh, we're so close. There we go. Oh. That's the sculpt for Hunchback. And then the Masquerade characters themselves are all going to be iterations of the monsters, but done stylistically. So there's an Egyptian character, there's a vampire character, there's a wolf character, there's a Frankenstein's monster character, and they're all attending this Dance of the Dead, this masquerade ball. And then proceeding over the whole thing is the Mask of the Red Death version of the Phantom of the Opera, except he is a still walker about 9 feet tall, and he's going to be presiding over the whole thing, and that's the Universal Monsters maze. And you know what? You guys have been so patient and so cool that I need to pay you back, because you guys had to sit there through all these interruptions and all these distractions, and I want to make it up to you. Is that cool? Can I make it up to you?
Hey, that's a good makeup.
We have a friend. His name is Slash. And we'd like to invite Slash and Stacy Quinolti, who worked on the music for Universal Monsters, to join us up on stage. Gentlemen, if you would be so kind. Ladies and gentlemen, Slash. Right on. So Slash, let's go back in time for a second. We all met in 2013 when you came to Halloween Horror Nights, right?
Right.
And what did you come to see that you wanted to see more than anything?
You know what it was? I just came for the whole thing. I kept hearing how great Halloween Horror Nights was. So I finally came down there, and then you and I met, and we went to the Black Sabbath maze. The thing I remember the most is I put these on. It was the 3D glasses.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck do I need 3D glasses for? Anyway, but we went in there, and he saw how I reacted. It was the coolest fucking thing I'd ever seen. That Black Sabbath dance was amazing.
Can I quote you at the end when we came out? Do you remember what you said?
It was the first time I'd ever made audible sounds of elation. I was actually going, I can't repeat it now.
But you came out and you're like, can we do this together? Can
Yeah.
we do something together? Like literally right after we came out of the maze. So I put my head together with Chris and I said, hey, Slash came to the event, he really dug it, he wants to do something with us. So we came up with an original idea that we did in 2013. It was called Clowns 3D. It was an original story that Chris and I put together, and then we brought Slash together with Stacy Quinalty, who I'll introduce over here. Stacy's our music producer that works for us at Universal Studios, and he produces all kinds of music for the park, and original music as well. And so I put Stacy and Slash together, and you guys created the score for Clowns.
Right. Well, so basically, inspired by the idea of doing the clowns, I wrote some theme music, and I introduced that to Stacy here, and Stacy did the sound design, and it just came out pretty awesome. Yeah, this guy's brilliant.
And there's a couple pictures. There's Slash inside Clowns.
With those crazy glasses.
And he even had a cameo. I don't know if you guys picked this up in Clowns, but there was that crazy clown car at the end, and it like came at you out of the dark. And if you looked carefully, there was a clown version of Slash in the clown car. But this time, there we go. Oh, no, don't. Oh God, I'm gonna leave it here, guys, because I'm so paranoid that if I touch this damn thing, it's gonna tell you the trivia question, and then I'm gonna have to take this behind the scenes tour and front of line passes that I was gonna give you and rip it to freaking shreds. Okay, so I'm not gonna touch the clicker anymore for the rest of this presentation. I'm just gonna park it up there and talk to you about the maze we're doing right now, which is Universal Monsters. So as soon as I found out we were gonna do this, I picked up the phone and I called this man.
Then he called me up and he goes, we're doing a Universal Monsters maze with all the original Universal Monsters. Would you like to do the music? And I was like, yeah, definitely. So I got to work on working out a cool sort of theme for the entire thing. I hooked up with Stacy here, and we started working together like we did the last time. But this time was a lot more extensive. We got a guitar synthesizer. I started doing all kinds of orchestrations for different instruments, doing this basic idea and all different kinds of musical tones and because of the different periods, and the different kinds of monster themes, having different versions of this same melody with different feels and different instrumentation. And then I worked tightly here with Stacy to sort of give it the sound design and do this kick-ass stuff that he does. It came out really awesome.
Yeah, totally awesome. Really, really excited. So it's amazing to have Slash part of our attraction again. Slash and I worked together years ago in Clowns. It was really, really fun. And to be able to get together and do this again at that level and the depth we did, it's really amazing. So, first of all, how about for John and Chris, a big round of applause for their amazing inspiration. And that takes us to, go ahead, John.
Well, I have a question. Do you guys want to hear some music? Would you guys we haven't played this for anybody, seriously. Literally just us and a couple of people have heard any of these tracks. And what I was originally, when I started hearing the tracks as these guys were sending them to me, what I was so impressed with is, number one, the scope and variety of the music. Clowns was essentially one track, really, just arranged different ways as we went through the different scenes. If I'm not mistaken, there's 19 different tracks to this maze. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So we wanted to take a different approach this year, which was, instead of letting one song route through the whole attraction and then everything be effects and scares beyond that, we really got together, Slash, and I, and John, and Chris, and said, hey, let's really try to score this thing so it's really specific to each room, which is a challenge for us, very time consuming, but really fun. So it allowed us to go through each room and each space and devise how they would sound and what we thought they would be. And Slash came down with these great melodies and we turned them into tunes.
Yep. So go ahead. Do you have a favorite, by the way, of all the tracks that you've written for this piece?
Well, the Matt, I was listening to him in the kitchen before he sent him over to me, and they're all really cool. I hate to say one's better than the other, but the Masquerade is pretty cool. The dubstep thing is pretty wild, but the collections I mean, there's just a bunch of different.
It's cool because it like does all these different genres of music, so it's not just one type of music. It really depended on what we were going for in the scene.
Dracula.
So, Dracula, yeah, Dracula is very different. Phantom is almost, dare I say, operatic. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah,
Guys?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think there's quite a bit of themes in there where there's industrial areas, industrial zones. We have the cinematic, operatic themes. We have more of the melodic, old school, and very, very themes of the character, like Dracula and the collection room. And we also just did some stuff for fun, which is like, hey, let's do a dubstep version and do something really kind of cool, which we ended up loving. And you'll hear that as one of the main intros.
I have to say that the dubstep sound I asked you to do because you did that thing for the walking Universal Monsters release and you had a standalone one for a long time.
Yeah,
How's it work? Was that incredible music that was in there?
Yeah, the Monsters remix.
Yeah. So I wanted to revisit that.
Yeah, so that was fun. That was really fun.
Cool. Well, do you guys want to play a track?
Yeah, let's do it. All right.
We
Yeah, so here's like the first track we started on, and it kind of became the main theme behind some of the marketing things that you will see. And I'll roll it.
And turn it up.
Crank it up. Let's rock and roll.